In the early days of July 2025, Chinese social media was suddenly shaken by unprecedented news. A series of explicit videos unexpectedly appeared and spread at breakneck speed across social media platforms, attracting millions of views along with countless shocked comments. At the center of this information storm was the mysterious name Hong Ji and the shocking number 1691, a figure that left both domestic and international public opinion astounded. Everything began with the tearful accusations of a young man at the Jiangning District Police Station in Nanjing. What initially seemed like just an ordinary romance scam gradually revealed itself to be a complex investigation, as each clue discovered led to truths that no one could have imagined. One day in early July, a young man walked into the police station with an extremely panicked expression, his eyes red and swollen from tears. He clutched his face, sobbing uncontrollably as he recounted being bitterly deceived in love. The person he had trusted through online conversations, a seemingly gentle, warm, middle-aged woman, turned out to be just a man in disguise. The pain intensified when the young man confessed he had spent his entire first month's salary in life to buy a gold necklace as a gift for his newly met love interest, only to discover the cruel truth when the mask was finally stripped away. The shock and extreme shame caused the young man to collapse right in front of the police station gate, crying like a child. Between his choked sobs, he could only mumble, "That money, I should have used it to buy a bracelet for my mother." The victim's broken and painful account, combined with the wave of explicit clips spreading across social media, sketched the first outlines of a case that would shake society. Meanwhile, the investigative police team quickly recognized signs of a fraud network of astonishing scale. Numerous men of all ages and social classes appeared in videos alongside a mysterious girl. What was notable was that many of them appeared well-groomed, even quite handsome and polite. What had driven them to such a shabby room? Why were they willing to bring strange gifts in exchange for what was supposed to be free love? And most shocking of all, how could an imposter deceive up to 1,691 men without being discovered for such an extended period? Was this number actually accurate, or just inflated rumors on social media? Who was the real face hidden behind that beauty mask, and what were the motives driving this behavior? This series of consecutive questions was the opening to a case that was both real and surreal, no different from science fiction movie plots, causing both Chinese public opinion and the international community to buzz in search of answers. Immediately after receiving the victim's report and witnessing the information tsunami about explicit clips sweeping social media, Nanjing police urgently launched an investigation with the highest priority level. However, they initially remained skeptical about the nearly 1,700 victims being circulated. A first hypothesis put forward by investigators: could this be an organized prostitution ring or a large-scale extortion network, in which the mysterious girl might only play the role of bait, while behind her was an entire high-tech criminal organization? However, actual clues quickly caused investigators to narrow their scope of suspicion, focusing only on a single suspect. The recent graduate revealed that he had arranged a meeting through a social media account named Hong Ji. This account introduced itself as a middle-aged woman living alone in Nanjing. The meeting was conducted right at Hong Ji's residence. Based on the victim's testimony and information gathered from leaked videos, police identified the location of the suspicious apartment in an ordinary residential complex in Jiangning District. Through meticulous analysis of the clips, they discovered that all videos shared a common setting: the same small room with dim lighting and a fixed camera angle, as if prearranged. This suggested that the person filming was very likely the room's owner. He had prepared cameras in advance to secretly record all those intimate encounters. Additionally, behind the girl in the clips, boxes of goods and bottles could occasionally be seen. When the images were enlarged, investigators identified these as 1.3-gallon cooking oil containers, along with stacked fruit boxes, perfectly matching accounts that each visitor brought gifts like cooking oil and fruit when coming here. This detail not only confirmed the reliability of witness testimony, but also helped precisely narrow down the suspect's apartment location. Parallel to image analysis, police conducted electronic trace investigations. They worked closely with cybersecurity departments to identify IP addresses and registration information related to the Hongjai account. Investigation results showed this account had regular and continuous activity in the Nanjing area for many years, with high probability belonging to an individual residing at the address previously identified. Additionally, telecom companies also provided complete data on phone numbers used for communication between Hongjai and victims. All calls and messages were traced back to a subscription registered under the name of a middle-aged man. This completely verified the initial suspicion police had. Hongjai was actually not a woman. After gathering sufficient preliminary evidence, the investigation team decided to conduct a secret and surprise arrest operation to prevent the suspect from potentially destroying important evidence. A group of detectives was sent with the cover of being delivery personnel, approaching the target apartment in the early morning hours, a time when they expected the suspect to be home and in the process of preparing for a new day of activities. Just as predicted, when the clock struck exactly 5 a.m., the time when the suspect usually had the habit of waking up to prepare for the day's activities, police quietly deployed a perimeter around the area. They rang the doorbell naturally, as if performing a routine delivery task. As soon as the door opened slightly, detectives quickly rushed in and subdued the suspect. The arrest proceeded quickly and with virtually no resistance, as the man in the apartment was completely caught off guard. What was notable was that at that moment, he was in the process of preparing his disguise, still wearing women's clothing, with his wig not yet removed and his face in the middle of incomplete makeup. This image was the clearest evidence that systematic impersonation had been carried out over time. The scene inside the apartment quickly clarified all the doubts the investigation team had raised. Right in the cramped living room, police saw rotting fruit boxes everywhere emitting foul odors, from withered grape clusters to cherry boxes that had spoiled from being forgotten too long. In the corner of the room, dozens of large cooking oil containers were stacked in high piles. After counting, police confirmed at least 47 oil containers taking up nearly all the balcony space. However, this was still not all the gifts customers had brought, but only the amount the small apartment could accommodate. This showed that the number of people who had visited the apartment must have been so numerous that the gifts they brought had piled up throughout the house. Besides that, countless other gifts appeared in the room, from giant flour bags, including someone who had brought up to 110 pounds after seeing Hongji boast about homemade dumplings, to expensive foreign liquor bottles, even a bulky treadmill. All were gifts that victims had generously offered in hopes of winning the beauty's affection. This scene truly exceeded all imagination, even for the most experienced investigators. But beyond physical evidence, the electronic evidence collected on site was even more convincing. Many of the suspects' laptops and phones contained a massive database of past encounters. Police found a systematically stored collection of over 1,600 video clips, each corresponding to a different visitor. In these clips, the cross-dresser recorded all intimate behaviors with victims from beginning to end at the same fixed camera angle. Particularly noteworthy, he also meticulously photographed each man who had meetings and carefully recorded accompanying information such as names, ages, personal preferences, as well as characteristic habits of each person. This special lover's notebook showed that the perpetrator had an extremely good memory about each relationship and was willing to put effort into building genuine feelings of attachment with each victim. What surprised everyone was that some names appeared repeatedly in the list, accompanied by notes, "Regular customer, met 2 to 3 times." This proved that many victims, even after discovering the truth about Hongji, still chose to return, turning these meetings into an unusual long-term relationship. This fact shocked even veteran investigators, that not just one individual but a group of men had accepted and even found pleasure in this strange situation. In subsequent recorded testimonies, some people confessed that when they discovered Hongjai was actually male, they not only didn't show anger, but even felt a different kind of strange excitement. These people later became loyal customers, continuously returning many times with various gifts. For example, one person sequentially brought cooking oil, fruit, and rice bags through 3 different dates, considering this a polite ritual when visiting their lover. However, not everyone had such reactions. Police records also documented numerous cases of men who panicked and fled immediately after realizing their partner was actually male. Some secretly filmed clips captured the shocked expressions and confused looks of several men when they began to realize the girl in front of them had suspicious signs. Their reactions showed surprising diversity. Some people immediately stopped and left the place without saying a word, while others had the mentality of, since I've already come this far, might as well finish it. Meaning they still continued to maintain the relationship because they felt sorry for the effort already invested. This mentality caused many victims, even after realizing the truth, to still choose to comply with the deceiver's intentions, and ultimately become unwilling main characters in the disgusting clips that were stored. After completing the collection of all evidence and physical proof, police brought the suspect to headquarters for interrogation. Hongji's real identity was quickly clarified through identity documents. His real name was Jiao, male, 38 years old, completely different from the image of a 60-year-old man as rumors circulated online. The fact that the suspect was much younger than what was rumored surprised even the police team. Authorities also had to issue a correction notice, confirming that the suspect was from another locality and had only moved to Nanjing to live, not a local resident as initial speculation suggested. The sophisticated disguise ability, along with false information in the early stages, had completely deceived public opinion about the perpetrator's true profile, creating a dramatic twist when the truth was finally revealed by authorities. Simultaneously with the investigation, Chinese authorities also issued stern warnings to the online community about spreading explicit videos related to the case. A mainstream newspaper specifically emphasized that the act of sharing images and clips that could identify victims' faces was not only a serious violation of personal privacy rights, but could also constitute the crime of spreading obscene content according to Chinese law. This warning was issued in the context of many internet users who, out of curiosity, had passed around the explicit clips with the purpose of viewing them to understand the truth, but inadvertently became accomplices in distributing illegal content. Authorities also issued serious recommendations that any individual participating in storing or distributing these videos could face up to 2 years in prison. This was considered a necessary measure to control the situation, protect the identity and dignity of victims, while preventing this case from becoming a disgusting entertainment on the internet. Thanks to the high determination of the police force, in just under 48 hours from when the incident was exposed, the main suspect was successfully arrested. The special task force gradually eliminated hypotheses about the existence of accomplices or an organized criminal network, as all evidence pointed to this being completely the illegal act of an individual. From disguising, creating fake accounts, to filming and distributing clips, everything was done by the suspect alone. With the successful arrest of the perpetrator, the initial investigation process had sketched the overall picture of the case. However, at this point, public opinion became even more curious about the real person behind this shocking romance scam. What was his background, and what had enabled him to maintain this bizarre behavior for such an extended period? These questions would gradually be clarified as we delve deeper into the perpetrator's biography and the entire criminal process. Hongji's real name was Jiao, born in 1987, currently 38 years old. He had moved to Nanjing for work and residence several years earlier. Before the incident was discovered, Jiao was living alone in a rented apartment, had retired early, so he had plenty of free time. What was notable was that all surrounding neighbors mistakenly believed he was a woman because Jiao always appeared with a feminine appearance and soft, gentle voice. Even the building's janitor had once praised this as a young girl with a good heart for regularly sharing surplus fruit with her. No one could imagine that this friendly girl was actually a man hiding a horrific secret. Regarding family circumstances, Jiao had once been married and had a child, but his wife had died quite early. Their only son was currently living abroad. This meant Jiao had spent many years living alone. Neighbors confirmed that he had virtually no communication with anyone in the residential area, nor did any friends or relatives come to visit. This isolated and reclusive lifestyle was considered by many to be the cause of Jiao's abnormal psychological development. During interrogation, he confessed to police about extreme loneliness and emptiness after losing his family. Each day returning to the small apartment with no laughter or conversation, and this very silence had driven him to think of the idea of seeking friends through impersonating a woman online, an action that Jiao initially justified as completely harmless, just to soothe his own loneliness and sadness. And so, Jiao created the persona Hong Jie, an attractive 30-year-old woman who had encountered many difficulties in love. The account's profile picture was of a beautiful woman with smooth white skin, large round eyes, and red lips. In reality, this was Jiao's photo after being processed through beauty apps, skin tightening and face reshaping to the point of complete transformation, making recognition as a man nearly impossible. In the self-introduction section, he wrote highly attractive sentences. Divorced and currently living alone, hoping to find a sincere life partner. With such an attractive yet sympathetic personal profile, Hong Ji quickly became the center of attention on dating and friendship forums. He spent hours each day participating in chat rooms or conducting live streams, completely embodying a beautiful woman with a sweet, charming voice. Thanks to his ability to skillfully mimic a female voice, he created delicate and adorable sounds. When playing Hong Ji, he regularly shared everyday stories full of feminine qualities. "I just finished cooking braised pork today. Does anyone want to come eat with me?" Or, "I just bought this dress, do you think it's beautiful?" These daily shares with strong feminine characteristics created an extremely realistic and vivid Hong Jie character, a talented woman who knew how to cook, loved beauty, but was enduring loneliness and yearning to find love. This perfect image quickly attracted a large number of men. His account began to have thousands of followers, and whenever Hong Ji started a live stream chat, numerous young men would join to watch, competing to give hearts and flirt. Hong Ji received these sweet words extremely skillfully, sometimes appearing shy and bashful, sometimes teasing and seductive, making the men become infatuated as if drunk. Whenever anyone began to suspect, he would appear sad and sulky, threatening to disappear from that person's life. This sulking tactic always worked immediately, because it hit right at men's psychology. They hurriedly apologized for having doubts, blamed themselves for being insensitive, and wanted to go deeper to prove their sincere feelings. And truly, the most skilled scammers are those who can make victims feel guilty about themselves. And Jiao had reached this level of mastery. After a period of chatting and building relationships, Jiao would skillfully suggest face-to-face meetings. A notable characteristic was that Hong Jie never mentioned money or requested financial support. This made the men even more convinced that this was not a service girl or ordinary scammer, but truly a sincere woman looking for love. However, Sister Hong was still very subtle in suggesting that according to politeness, men when visiting women should bring small gifts. This request seemed completely reasonable and not excessive, so most people were happy to accept it willingly. However, this very thing became the most effective bait. A Chinese newspaper commented that this was perhaps precisely the reason why this cross-dressing man could attract such a large number of men. And indeed, many people were lured by the invitation of a free romance, a sweet trap that almost anyone would find hard to resist, especially those who both liked experiencing new things but were afraid of spending money. Regarding mental health status, there is currently no official conclusion from psychiatric evaluation of Jiao. However, many psychology experts have assessed that his behavior shows signs of personality disorder. He may be suffering from transvestic syndrome, a condition with tendencies to like wearing clothing and presenting as the opposite gender, or it could be another type of psychological disorder when feeling excited from deceiving others. However, what's important is that Jiao still had complete awareness that his behavior was wrong and illegal, as demonstrated by his doing everything secretly filming clips and carefully hiding all activities. Therefore, the possibility of him being declared incapable of legal responsibility due to mental illness is very low. Conversely, experts in this field believe this is a case of crime committed with extremely careful and conscious calculation, stemming from abnormal psychological needs combined with material greed and profit, rather than due to hallucination symptoms or serious mental disorders. At police headquarters, under pressure from irrefutable evidence and professional interrogation techniques, Jiao finally had to bow his head and confess to all his illegal acts. However, he still tried to justify his actions by talking about extreme loneliness, claiming he only wanted to find friends to soothe the emptiness in his soul after his wife's death and his son having to work far from home. But the investigation team was not moved by this sympathetic story. They pointed out bluntly that if the real motive was simply to find friends to overcome loneliness, then Jiao would not have needed to secretly film videos and distribute them for profit. These were clearly purposeful illegal acts with high intent, reflecting greed and contempt for the law. Faced with this sharp and irrefutable argument, the perpetrator could only remain silent and bow his head. Perhaps this was when he truly realized that greed had pushed him onto a path of sin from which there was no turning back. Based on analysis, police divided the criminal motive into two distinct phases: the initial motive and the motive formed afterward. In the first phase, as Jiao himself testified, he committed these acts stemming from deep loneliness, wanting to seek joy and the feeling of being cared for and loved. Choosing to impersonate a woman helped him approach men more easily, because if he introduced himself as a middle-aged man, the ability to make friends or have close relationships would become very limited. This showed that Jiao might not be homosexual in the traditional sense, but simply that he craved attention and care from men to the point of being willing to completely change his gender identity to achieve this goal. However, a second motive gradually formed when he realized he could gain benefits from these fake relationships. The benefits he pursued had two aspects: materially through gifts and items that customers brought, and financially demonstrated through his secretly filming encounters, then distributing them to both earn money and satisfy his own perverted desires. His secretly uploading explicit videos online showed that Jiao was no longer simply seeking spiritual companionship, but had become a profiteer, exploiting both those he contacted directly and the viewing community online. This motive was much more practical and deserving of harsher condemnation than the initial story of loneliness. Regarding his victims, the story of the student mentioned at the beginning was just one of countless cases in this incident. Police investigation files showed that victims varied greatly in age and occupation, from college students, office workers, fitness trainers, to married men. What they all had in common was being attracted by the image of a mature, attractive, talented, but lonely woman seeking a soulmate that the perpetrator had cleverly constructed. The psychological reactions of each person upon discovering the truth were also diverse and complex. Some felt terrified and utterly ashamed, others became angry and wanted to report the entire incident, but quite a few were curious and even found the unusual experience interesting, ultimately choosing to compromise with themselves. What was noteworthy was that a significant number of victims were initially young men with little experience in love, therefore easily drawn into this fake but seemingly sweet emotional web. Another group was married men who wanted to seek new sensations without wanting to spend much money, so they were attracted by the invitation of free romance. Despite having different initial motives, in the end they all became victims of a large-scale scam, having their reputation and privacy seriously violated when their most private behaviors were secretly recorded and then widely distributed online. It can be affirmed that the number 1,691 victims symbolized 1,691 tragic stories of shame and humiliation, a record number shocking not only for its enormous scale, but also for the strange and unprecedented nature of the entire incident. After completing the preliminary investigation file, on July 7, 2025, Nanjing police officially announced the arrest of suspect Jiao, aka Hong Jie, for investigation of fraud and distribution of obscene cultural materials. Authorities also emphasized that this case was particularly serious and unprecedented in history, requiring additional time for expanded investigation to fully identify all victims, clarify all circumstances, and assess related criminal factors. Currently, the suspect is being held in detention to serve the investigation, awaiting completion of the file for transfer to the Procuratorate for prosecution. And finally, the lesson drawn from this incident is truly costly. The case has become a warning that anyone can become a victim of romance scams, regardless of gender. The most essential thing is to raise awareness for everyone, especially young people. Young people's curiosity and desire to explore can easily be exploited by those with bad intentions. People need to know how to protect themselves, maintain clear thinking when faced with invitations that seem too attractive compared to reality, and always question when encountering situations that are too good to be true. And that concludes today's case. Thank you for following along, and see you in the next videos.